Picture this. You haven't left your house in 3 days. It's raining, it's gray, and honestly, you're losing your mind. But you've got your couch, your heating, a full fridge, your phone. Now I want you to take all of that away. No roof, no walls, no dry clothes, no hot coffee, just you, a forest somewhere in prehistoric Europe, and rain that hasn't stopped in weeks. The temperature? Just barely above the point where your body starts shutting down. How do you survive that? Not as a fun little thought experiment, as your actual daily life. Because here's the thing nobody really talks about when it comes to ancient humans. We're always focused on the exciting stuff, the predators, the big migrations, the tribal warfare. But rain? Rain was unglamorous, and that's exactly why it gets ignored. But rain might have been the most consistently dangerous thing ancient humans ever faced. It didn't just make life uncomfortable. It killed fires, it caused hypothermia, it rotted food supplies, it flooded shelters, and it lasted for months. And yet, ancient humans didn't just survive it. They thrived in some of the wettest, most brutal climates on the planet. So how did they actually do it? Let's get into it. Okay, so when most people imagine rain danger, they think drowning. Makes sense. But that's actually not the biggest threat. The real killer is heat loss. Here's a wild fact. Water pulls heat away from your body about 25 times faster than air does. 25 times. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between feeling a little chilly in a cold room versus actively dying in a cold lake. When you're soaking wet, your body is hemorrhaging heat faster than your metabolism can replace it. Add some wind and a temperature around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just a normal spring night in a lot of places, and you've got a textbook hypothermia situation. Ancient humans learned this the hard way, not from reading a science textbook, from watching people in their group die. So the number one survival skill in wet conditions wasn't finding food. It wasn't building the perfect shelter. It was keeping your core body temperature up. Everything else came second. Let's talk about fire, because yeah, it's the obvious answer. But here's where it gets interesting. We tend to think of fire like it's something you make when you need it, like ordering takeout. You need warmth, you start a fire. Simple. Ancient humans didn't think like that. They thought about fire the way we think about electricity. You don't make electricity when you need it. You maintain the system that delivers it, constantly. Because here's the reality. Starting a fire from scratch in wet conditions, with no lighter, no matches, no dry tinder, it's one of the hardest things a human being can do with their bare hands. So ancient humans didn't let it come to that. They carried fire. Seriously. Carrying live embers was a practiced, deliberate skill. Embers wrapped in slow-burning bark or damp moss could stay alive for hours while a group was on the move. Archaeological evidence from sites across Europe shows hearths that burned continuously for years. Not relit repeatedly, maintained. Like a living thing that needed feeding. And someone's entire job during bad weather? Keep the fire alive. Not hunt, not forage, sit with the fire and make sure it doesn't go out. That might actually be one of the earliest specialized jobs in human history. Before we had doctors or toolmakers or traders, we had the firekeeper. Okay, real talk. The whole caveman living in a cave thing? It's a little misleading. Yes, ancient humans used caves, but caves are actually pretty rare, often cold and damp, and frequently already occupied by animals that would very much like to eat you. Most ancient humans built their own shelters, and those shelters? Way smarter than you'd think. The oldest constructed shelters we've found date back around 400,000 years, before Homo sapiens even existed, and they show real environmental thinking. Branches angled to shed water, leaves layered like shingles so rain runs off instead of through. That's a roof. A primitive one, sure, but a roof. Fast forward to around 15,000 years ago, and you've got mammoth bone structures in Eastern Europe. Heavy bones anchored into the ground to resist wind. Animal hides stretched over the frame. Insulation inside. These weren't holes to hide in. These were engineered environments. And speaking of hides, this is actually one of the most underrated innovations in all of human history. Animal hide, properly prepared, is nearly waterproof. The natural fat content alone gives it water resistance. And when ancient humans started scraping, stretching, smoking, and treating hides with fat or other organic material, they were basically inventing leather. Think about the cognitive leap that requires. You kill an animal today, you spend several days processing the hide, and weeks later, it keeps you dry in the rain. That's planning. That's abstract thinking. That's solving a problem that doesn't exist yet. We have evidence of hide scraping tools going back at least 120,000 years, possibly earlier. The drive to stay dry was a strong enough pressure that it pushed ancient humans toward genuinely complex thinking. Rain didn't just threaten them, it made them smarter. Here's something that completely blew my mind when I first came across it. Modern humans experience weather reactively. It starts raining, we get wet, we go inside. We've outsourced weather awareness to an app on our phone. And in doing so, we've lost a skill that ancient humans had dialed in to an almost unbelievable degree. They could read the environment like a language. The smell of rain before it arrives, that's a real thing, by the way. It's called petrichor. That's a genuine signal. So is animal behavior. Birds fly lower before a storm. Insects swarm. Certain animals move to higher ground hours before rain hits. Wind direction shifts. Cloud texture changes. Ancient humans read all of these signals constantly, automatically, because missing them wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous. And it wasn't just the sky, it was the terrain too. Cold air sinks, water pools in valleys. Camping on even a slight rise versus a hollow could be the difference between waking up damp and waking up sitting in several inches of freezing water. South-facing slopes dry faster. Dense tree canopy can block a surprising amount of light rain entirely. Certain rock formations create natural overhangs that have been used as shelters on literally every inhabited continent. This terrain knowledge was accumulated, passed down. Groups returned to the same good shelter spots seasonally, the same way they returned to good hunting grounds. Archaeological sites show layers of ash and bone stacked on top of each other across thousands of years at the same location. The spot was good. Everyone knew it. They passed that knowledge forward. Last thing, and honestly, this might be the most important point of all. The lone survivor out there battling the elements by himself, that's a movie trope. In reality, surviving a months-long rainy season without modern gear was a group project. Shared body heat is a real survival mechanism. When it's cold and wet, you sleep close to other warm bodies. Privacy is a warm weather luxury. Ancient humans huddled together, and that wasn't weakness, it was smart. The group also functioned as a knowledge bank. Every technique that worked, the fire carrying method, the hide waterproofing process, which trees have bark that burns slow enough to carry embers, none of that was reinvented every generation. It was taught, elder to younger, directly, through observation and practice, which is why losing an elder wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a survival event. That person carried knowledge that couldn't be quickly replaced. And that's almost certainly why we see evidence of care for older, non-productive individuals surprisingly early in the archaeological record. Keeping experienced elders alive wasn't just compassion, it was rational. Ancient humans survived rain not because they were tougher than us, not because they were built differently. They survived because they paid attention, they prepared, they worked together, and they passed knowledge forward. They didn't have Gore-Tex, they had each other. And honestly, that turned out to be enough.